This is the Ask Faleskini podcast, where the modern economy is discussed from a skeptic's perspective. Mr. Faleskini helps you distinguish what is sustainable in our economy and what isn't. Not everything that glitters is gold, and not all mud is dirty. The podcaster Mr. Faleskini provides no-nonsense advice. He had it all, lost it all, went bankrupt multiple times, and is now attempting to come back from zero with sustainable growth. There are numerous coaches and preachers on the internet that preach about positive thinking and how life is all roses if you just care to see it that way. Well, Mr. Faleskini is definitely not one of them. We recommend you ask Faleskini to keep it real. He discusses the darker side of the current economic reality, the side that's more important for your personal and business finance. His first intention is to help you keep what you already have. Not to be a complete party pooper, Mr. Faleskini will also hint at the earning opportunities in the economy today. In order to please the almighty algorithm, please like, share, and subscribe. And now it's time to start taking notes. The mic goes to the podcaster, the one and only Mr. Faleskini.
Welcome to the Ask Faleskini podcast with a guest. I'm proud to present David K. David is a cybersecurity expert. He helps people and companies think about cybersecurity and implement cybersecurity. David, please tell us more about yourself. What is your story?
Peter, first of all, thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I've been a listener for a long time. I love your story, and I'm really thrilled to be here to talk a little bit about mine. So I'm the CEO of a company called Sotera Digital Security. We create a secure phone. It is probably the only truly secure phone available in the world today, which is kind of an amazing claim, but I'm sure we'll talk about that more as we go on. But my background, in a lot of ways is similar to yours. I started my career a long time ago as a lawyer. In the United States at a large firm called Aiken Gump. I was a banker for a hot second at Bear Stearns. I think I have the infamous distinction of being one of the last associates hired by Bear Stearns. I think it was like a week after I was hired, they went under. And it was super fun to have given notice at my law firm to go to a financial firm when the financial firm didn't exist and the world was cratered. In 2008. Ultimately signed on with another bank called Jefferies, worked there for a little while, and then founded and ran a $1 billion plus private equity firm in New York for the better part of 10 years. Again, similar to you, I had young kids. I wasn't seeing my family, and I decided to take a step back from that, and I started sitting on boards of medium to large size public and private companies until I got a call one day from a guy named Gary Cohn. Gary Cohn was the COO of Goldman Sachs for about 10 years. He was a part of President Trump's cabinet or administration during his first term. And now, among other things, is the chairman of IBM. And he called me up and said, hey, 4 words that you don't want to hear from Gary Cohn, I need a favor. And he asked me to take a look at the cybersecurity company called Sotera. And as I did my diligence on the phone and the product and how it all came together, I fell in love and I decided to sign up with the company.
Ooh, that's amazing story. All this in such a short time and so many switches. And finally, you're in cybersecurity.
Yep.
How important is cybersecurity for business? You've been in large businesses, you've been an investment banker, you've been a lawyer. How important is cybersecurity for businesses right now in UK, in US? How would you prioritize it? Where in your priority scale is a cybersecurity?
It's a great question. I would say certainly below making money, but way above where most people, including me, throughout my career have put it. And I think that there is, I think, a general lack of understanding. And I feel really comfortable saying that because I was part of that, C-suite, senior level executive finance person, who thought I knew generally what was going on and what the risks were and did not. And so I think that the importance is large. And I think just as critically, I think it's growing, and it's growing at an exponential or logarithmic rate in today's world. And I think one really good example of that is Pegasus. Okay. So Pegasus is a spyware app that was originally created by the Israeli government, and is now something that is commercially available. And it is a great example of how the world has changed since, at least, for me, I kind of felt like I had grown up and been educated about threats that were inherent in the system. So what is Pegasus? A lot of people have heard about it, right? It's been New York Times, Wall Street Journal, very popular, different podcast, not as great as yours in the US, called The Daily, and Frontline, which is a 60 minutes type of news documentary, did a 2-part series on it. But Pegasus is a spyware app that invades the operating system of your phone. And there are a couple of really unique parts about this spyware. The first is when you get a text with Pegasus in it, it has already infected your phone. Okay, so think about that for a minute. So I grew up thinking that, I get texts all the time, like, your account at Bank of America has been hacked, click here, and I don't have an account at Bank of America, right? And the way that I grew up, at least, is if you don't click it, you're fine. Just don't touch it, right? Or delete it. The genius of Pegasus is the minute you receive the text, your phone is infected, okay? And it is a mirror into your phone. So they have access to your camera, they have access to your screen, your keystrokes. They can see and do everything on your phone that you can do. And there is no real protection against it today. So what does that mean? What that means is that we have taken this whole global cybersecurity piece outside of the state-sponsored espionage and down a level where all of us need to think about it. So a couple of examples, okay? People say to me all the time, Signal and WhatsApp, right? I use Signal, I use WhatsApp. These are secure. This is, I think, if you take nothing away from this episode except one thing, take this away, okay? Signal and WhatsApp do exactly what they say they're going to do. When you send a text on WhatsApp and that signal is in the air until it gets to the other side of the phone, the other phone, it is largely extremely secure. It is very hard, even for state-sponsored or state security agencies, to intercept and decrypt that message. And that is their core claim, and it is correct. But that's like saying this room, which has 2 doors, has a completely protected door 1, which is true, but doesn't say anything about the second door. Signal and WhatsApp exist on an operating system in your phone. If you have an Apple phone, it's an iOS. If you have an Android phone, it's the Android operating system. Those operating systems are necessarily porous. All right? All the interconnectivity that you have on the phone, which, by the way, is becoming even more and more important to our ability to go about our everyday lives. That is true. But it necessarily mandates that there are gaps in those operating systems, huge gaps. And Pegasus gets into and under those gaps, okay? And so when Pegasus infects your phone, it infects your phone at the operating system level. And what that means is that it's not intercepting and decrypting your messages in the air. It's on your phone. It can see your WhatsApp messages. It can see your Signal messages because they are up on your phone just like you are. Okay. And so
can we discuss a couple of protection strategies, and can you comment on them?
definitely.
So one of the protection strategy used to be, I don't know if it's still valuable, but at our time, so that's 10 years ago, we would have a smartphone with a limited space. So you could not save anything, not even the text messages on your phone. So this should protect, except for the RAM memory, should protect your phone from foreign code being uploaded to your system. Would you say that could be a potentially good strategy to go about security?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think that is a outdated way to do it, and I think the answer today is really no. And to be fair, it does depend on what it is that you're doing, right? If you are somebody who is working as a manager at a major department store in New York or London, that may be sufficient for you. If you also have a mistress or mister, probably not, right? Because Pegasus is commercially available now. You can go on the dark web and for $50,000, more or less, get access to this tool that can allow you to get up on anyone's phone, and it is largely undetectable. Right? They have to take apart your phone at a couple of specialized labs to even know that it is there. You can't just bring it in your local computer shop and say, am I infected with malware? It does not work that way. Right? And so I think a good example of where the strategy that you're talking about falls short today, obviously a totally different level. Okay. But if you look at what's going on in the Middle East right now with Hamas, Palestine, and Israel, okay, the fighting that is going on the Hamas side, those fighters are using Signal, WhatsApp, and separate phones. Okay, they are not going up on a normal cell phone tower to have communications. But those communications in all three of those circumstances, what I was talking about, what you talked about, I think all of us have seen the IDF, which is the Israeli security forces, posting the conversations that they've gotten from those phones, right? It's the same technology that's available commercially now, right? You can go, or you can call a private investigator, right? I know someone who was involved in a very large divorce, and they called a private investigator and they asked them to get information on what was going on. That investigator got Pegasus, got up on the other person's phone, and had it all. It is really and truly that simple today.
Okay, so at what turnover the companies should understand that they cannot use iPhones or other commercially available phones and start using higher level of protection? Where is the threshold?
Great question. I think I would say two things. First is that you're always going to need your regular phone. So I don't think it's so much not using that phone. I think it is having an additional device or technology available for those conversations and communications that need it. Okay. So that I think is part one. Part two is turnover is not really, I think, what people should think about as a relevant metric. I think it's more, at what point do you have information or communications that would require it? So let me give you an example. If you're founding a biotech company and you believe that you have come up with a new type of chemical conglomeration that's going to have a major impact on Alzheimer's, right? If you have not raised a single dollar yet in financing, you need to get off your normal phone immediately, okay? Because while you have no turnover, the information that you have that is critical to your business can be taken very easily by the first venture or angel investor that you are on the phone with, who sends you a text message, takes that information and uses it before it's patented. One of our biggest customers, some of our biggest customers are people that are involved in biotech, that are traveling and have offices in East Asia, right? I mean, I don't know if you saw it or not. This was big news, but Deloitte and KPMG in November of this year, the two largest accounting and consulting firms in the world, mandated that their employees are not allowed to bring their personal phones into Hong Kong. Period, full stop. Okay. You cannot bring it with you. If Signal, WhatsApp, or having a separate phone like you talked about worked, they would use that. If there was any technology that could go over your personal phone that worked, they would use that. It does not exist today, right?
I have another question. You're not talking just about your phone. You're also talking about the solution that you're providing. What I'm really curious about is when I was working in Switzerland, we had 11 billion under management. We had special procedures, what can be communicated over the phone and what can only be communicated in quiet room. So how important are procedures and how important is technology? Because I don't think that technology can solve everything. Where is the balance?
It's a great question. I think that kind of the goal, just to talk about Sotera for a minute, our goal is to take that gap between technology and procedures and make it and collapse it, right? And so there is a need for procedures. So in the US, we call them SCIFs, which are, basically Faraday cages. They have the same concept, obviously, in the UK and Europe, where you can go to have conversations where electronics are either and or not allowed in or will not work and or transmit while you are in those rooms. Okay. Mm-hmm. The Sotera device, just to give an idea of kind of how these things meld together, is our secret sauce is that we have no secret sauce. Okay. What does that mean? It means that we are partnered with a company, and this is really where the Gary Cohn piece comes back into the story. We're partnered with a company that is probably one of the most important companies in the United States that nobody's ever heard of. It's a company called Green Hills. Mm-hmm. Green Hills technology has provided the operating system that is used by the US government to protect the US Department of Defense, the US nuclear codes, and the US Strike Force, among other things. Okay. And they've been doing it for 20 years and they have never been hacked. Okay. One of the only other commercial purposes that Green Hills operating system is used for, believe it or not, is in Boeing and Airbus planes. Okay. Mm-hmm. When you get in a Boeing and Airbus plane, every single thing on the plane has a primary, secondary, and tertiary system for obvious reasons. Okay. There is only one thing on the plane that you get on that is the same primary, secondary, and tertiary. And that is the Green Hills operating system, because that is how secure it is. Okay. Think about that for a minute. We were able to,
Do I have the right information that is a Unix-based system?
It is not really. Part of the security protocols that are a part of the system is that they created their own operating system using their own language in their own environment called Integrity 178B. And the number of people that know how to code in that environment are very, very small. None of them exist at Sotera, right? And so what we did is we have a partnership with Green Hills to use their technology. We are the only people that are available, that are allowed to use this technology in a phone. And so the operating system in our phone, the apps in our phone, and the operating system in our phone, and even the hardware in our phone is built with this code from the ground up. So even if right? You want to talk about the top part of that security triangle. Even if a bad actor were to come and put a chip, listening chip in your phone, unless it was also written in the Integrity 178B code, which it would not be, this phone wouldn't even recognize it as a piece of technology. It'd be the same thing as taking a piece of food and putting it in there. It won't even give it power. Okay. And so why I said our secret sauce is that it's not so secret is that every nation state in the world for the last 20 years, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, have tried to hack this system. Not hard to get your hands on the technology with the system. It's in every Airbus and Boeing plane that exists in the world. Okay. And they have never been able to hack it. And that is what we ride on. Whereas a lot of solutions that are out there, the difficulty of those solutions. And by the way, this is also the difficulty that Google, Android has, and Apple has, which is you put a piece of technology out there and, within 3 weeks, some kid in Uzbekistan, right, has found a way to hack it. And it's like, oh my God. And then there's patches and patches on top of patches on top of patches. This system is the billions of dollars a year are spent by the US government and this company to keep this system separate and safe, right? And so if somebody hacks this, what I always tell people is, what they say, what if somebody hacks it? I'm like, well, then kiss your dog, hug your wife. We have a lot bigger problems if somebody hacks this system than whatever it is that's on your phone. And so where that comes back to what you were talking about, which is a great question, which is process and security. Okay, so is that the need for process over technology depends on the strength and confidence in the technology. So if you have a Faraday cage in your office, you can do whatever you want. In that Faraday cage, there's no electronics coming in or going out. Part of the benefit of our phone is that when you're talking on this phone, as long as nobody's in earshot to hear you while you're actually talking, right? If someone was hiding in my closet listening to me right now, even if I was on the Sotera phone, they would hear my actual voice. Outside of that, you don't need a process because it is completely secure. The lower the level of security you have, the more process you need. If you are going to a meeting and having discussions with people about private and confidential things, you can turn off your phone, fine. Leave your phone outside the room, better, right? Not bring it in the office, even better, right? But I think that, is a very long-winded answer to what's a very simple question. But I think it's a balancing scale. The more confident you are in the technology that you have, the less process you need. If you're not willing to invest in technology, you need more process. And one interesting thing that I don't think people think about enough is the crossing of those costs. So we have one person who is using the phone with a client in Dubai, okay? And that client was very concerned about being listened to by the government. And this is a US-based advisor that was working with them. And so once a month, they would both fly to London. They would sit down, they would spend the day together. It was the airlines, the hotels, the food, the time off of doing work, right? And just the complete mess to their schedules in doing that. They have these phones and now they text and talk all the time, right? And they saved a huge amount of money by being able to minimize their process by putting in place technology. So I think that's an example of that balance, if that helped answer your question.
Yes, thank you. As I said, we had a lot of procedures, but that is probably because of the lack of technology, as you explained.
Yeah.
So when should company decide to start and get in contact with you? What is the trigger? What should be happening, or should they decide immediately in order something bad not to happen in the future? What's your take on that?
It's a good question. I think there are a couple of good trigger points. points where, you should think about whether or not you need to get some technology into your kind of mobile communications. Okay. One really important one is if you find yourself even once a quarter or once every 6 months telling someone, you know what, let's just meet in person. Okay. Or we should just get together and maybe this is something we should really talk about live. If that happens, it is probably a good sign that you could utilize one of these phones. And the reason for that is whether it's to protect your information or to save yourself time by being able to have those communications wherever you are or more frequently over text, it is a good idea at that point to start to think maybe my regular phone, is not the way. The second, I think, good trigger is to the extent that you start to deal with information that is proprietary or critical for your business and that could harm you if it fell into the hands of one of your competitors. And Peter, I know you know this, we've talked about this before, but a lot of people, if they can't see it, they're not worried about it, right? And I tell people all the time, if you don't know that somebody has taken your core IP or your core business intelligence that makes you different, whether or not you know it or not, you may feel good about it, but if a competitor or adversary gets that information and is using it against you, they're not going to be like, ha ha ha, I got this information from you, but it's still going to harm you, right? It's like having cancer but not testing for it. It's still killing you, whether you test for it or not.
Yeah, let me just give an opinion here.
Please.
What is really important is that you have to work on your security, despite if you have an imminent problem or not, because security is deteriorating. Even if we don't see it that way, and we believe that we are not the victim of something and that nobody cares about ourselves. Right now, industrial espionage is probably the most, I won't say abundant, but most used way that has substituted R&D. And it happens on so many levels. And even if you believe you have a small company and nobody cares about you, there's a huge possibility that someone is tracking what you're doing, especially with the artificial intelligence and all the capabilities of government and non-governmental agencies. Right now, basically everyone is tracked. And it's important to understand, as you said, in biotech and other things, even if you have a unique point of sale that you don't want to give up, I do believe that it's important that you have to protect your assets. And information is one of the most important assets in any company.
Peter, it's I couldn't agree more. It is so rampant. And I agree, biotech is just an example, and maybe not even the best one. I know of examples where people were using it to find out what people in competitor companies were making and which people were unhappy in order to pick off key personnel, right? I mean, there is the use of this technology, the movement of the ability to easily and cheaply get up on your phone, not just track you, but see your texts, your emails, your WhatsApps, has moved from only the government space to being commercially available to almost anyone. And that process of that technology becoming more and more commonplace isn't going anywhere. It's only going to become more and more available. And it is, I think it is one of the key risks to any medium to large size or growth business. Absolutely.
So how should they start? So how should our listeners start improving or first raising awareness? What should they to raise their awareness about the cybersecurity risks? And when they're aware of them, how should they go about it? Should they contact you? Do you have any counselors in your company that could help them understand their risks? What is the right way to go about it?
Absolutely. I think the first thing to do is to reach out, right? Our website, soterradigitalsecurity.com, is up. It has a lot of very, very good resources, explanations, and different ways in which, to your point, I think a lot of people don't even know what they don't know or don't know what they should look for. That is a really good starting point as a resource to start to think about how your data may be compromised and whether it makes sense for you to do something about it. You should contact us. We do have people that are on staff that can help advise you. If we can help you, great. If not, we will send you to someone who can, or potentially say, you know what? Makes sense that you're concerned about that, but you're okay with where you are, right? That is a possible outcome too, right? The point is everybody needs to start thinking about this because the world has changed. That doesn't necessarily mean that you need to completely alter the way you're doing business today. You may not, but it is certainly worth getting educated. When companies like Deloitte and KPMG are no longer allowing employees to carry their phones with them on trips, right? That is a good point for everybody that has a business to stop, think, and say, okay, the world has changed. Am I appropriately changing with it right now or not?
Okay. For public companies, would you agree that practically every public company needs cybersecurity in a way and technology that you are offering? Would that be a safe guess that every C-level executive in public company needs a phone like yours?
Zero question. That's maybe the easiest question. That's probably even easier than giving you my background. I mean, that is absolute no-brainer. No-brainer.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'll tell you one thing that is, I kind of firmly believe with public companies. And this is why I think almost every C-suite or senior manager or person that wants to be at that level should have some protection like this phone. Okay. When I think about the world, all right, if I was a bad guy, how would I think about the world? In the 1300s, I don't know how you got caught doing any kind of crime. I feel like it would be very, very hard to do that, right? No technology, no surveillance. 3, 5, 7 years ago, I don't know how you don't get caught doing a crime, right? Everything we do is tracked. Everything we do is available. Very, very hard. Today, if you wanted to be a bad guy, okay, and you wanted to go to pick a company without extradition, right? Some random, beautiful tropical island, and you bought Pegasus, okay? And then you decided that you wanted to know what Apple's earnings were going to be next quarter, right? Go on LinkedIn, get as many middle manager or senior level people's phone numbers, send each of them Pegasus. Use some basic AI to go through all of the information on their phone and get an idea of how the business is going, right? You would have perfect visibility into generally how sales were going to be with any company, how technology was going, how testing was going, right? How you could have a public company where by definition, you and senior managers have material non-public information and not be taking basic steps to protect your company is bad for your company. And I think disingenuous and not appropriate for the investors who are relying on the fact that nobody's being given an unnecessary or unfair advantage. So, I mean, there is no question to me that if you want to be or currently are in that upper echelon level of management or information, especially in a public company, you need to be, if you're not seriously thinking about your security and mobile security, that's not great.
Thank you for all these insights. Is there anything else you would like our listeners to take from this interview? Any quick tips or trade secrets that you can share?
What, are you trying to get me in trouble? I'm not sharing trade secrets. Come on, Peter. That was a good try. It was a good try in the cybersecurity one to get me to give trade secrets. No.
I was going to ask you about your password, but
no. But I will say I love, like I said, I love listening to your podcast, and I know your quotes. And so I will say that I probably do have maybe one thing that I would say, which is a quote that anyone who has worked with me in any capacity has heard me say over and over and over again, that I would leave your audience. Very, very simple but important one to me, which is crawl, walk, run, sprint. There is no skipping. There is no, I'm sure there are people that got involved in a business or an issue where all of a sudden good things fell into their hand like a lotto ticket. I have been very, very lucky in my career and my life to be successful. And at every single point during that process, the only way to get from wherever you start to even the beginning of where you want to be is to start at the beginning and crawl and fight and scratch and then walk. And once you are good at walking, once you understand the world that you're in and you can kind of figure it out, then you can start to run. And once you get through the running, then you can sprint. But that is it, right? You need to, at least from my perspective and in my life, trying to go from crawling to sprinting is a much more high chance of failure. And so for me, I would just leave people with whatever you're doing, whether it's in your business or looking at cybersecurity, crawl, walk, run, sprint.
Thank you very much for this insight. And I would like to let our listeners know where they can reach you.
Yeah. The website, please. Sotera Digital Security. Go on our website. There's plenty of different ways to contact us. We have chat, email, and there's a phone number. We're available. We're here. We want to help. And yeah, please reach out. Say hi.
Thank you, David. Thank you for being my guest tonight.
Peter, thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Mr. Faleskini, for this outstanding podcast. And thank you for listening to the Ask Faleskini podcast until the end. Mr. Faleskini would love to hear your feedback in the comments. And don't forget, if you want to know, ask Faleskini or listen to the Ask Faleskini podcast. In order to please the almighty algorithm, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.